The short story of Elizabeth Premyslovna of Bohemia is a wealth of strange occurrences that seem almost comical. She had the strength to seize power for herself, and to search for that power even when sidelined. Her journey from a princess to a queen to a mother left in poverty by her husband was marked by the quarrels of her very dysfunctional family of Habsburg progenitors. She was born in January of 1292 to Premyslid King Wenceslaus II of Bohemia and Poland, who was from an extensive royal lineage spread across Eastern Europe, with ancestors ranging from the kings of Germany to the Hungarian monarchy to the Grand Princes of Kiev. Elizabeth's mother was Judith of Habsburg, daughter of the first king of Germany, from the line of the House of Habsburg's progenitors. Of this incredibly prestigious couple, Elizabeth was the third child to survive. Her parents were the classical political enemies to lovers story. Judith was betrothed to the son of her father's greatest enemy at age 5 as part of a treaty. Meanwhile, her fiancé Wenceslaus was having the same problem that every 7-year-old does: the inability to rule a nation on his own after his father's death. He had a very ineffective regent at whose court he lived for many years, far away from the capital of Prague. Soon after, though, his engagement to Judith was renewed and he finally returned to the capital. There, he found that his mother's lover, who would later marry his mother, held much of the nation's power, but naturally didn't do much about it, because he was 12. Wenceslaus and Judith finally met a few years later at their wedding ceremony, and she would finally go live with him a few years after that. Judith was not very fond of Wenceslaus' stepfather, and so, together, they had him beheaded, allowing Wenceslaus to finally come into his own as King of Bohemia. He would later become Duke of Krakow and King of Poland as well. And into this family fun, Elizabeth was born. She was certainly not the luckiest of princesses. By her teens, she was completely orphaned, leaving her brother, also named Wenceslaus, as king. Their father had already established the younger Wenceslaus as King of Hungary and Croatia, though the Pope did not consent to his election as king and instead preferred Charles of Anjou. Local lords were more in power than either of them anyway, but this whole mess led to the Pope being excommunicated by a Hungarian priest. Eventually, upon his father's death, Wenceslaus was forced to give up Hungary's throne, but they did make sure to take the physical crown of Hungary to Prague with them. And by the way, Prague Castle had been destroyed in a fire by this point. Wenceslaus became king of Poland and Bohemia, got married, and then proceeded to get stabbed to death. As he was the last living Premyslid male, a power struggle ensued, and then Elizabeth got involved. She had been living with her aunt and her sister Anne at a nunnery until Anne married Henry of Bohemia. Together, Henry and Anne contested with Anne's cousin, Rudolph, who, to solidify his claim, married Anne and Elizabeth's stepmother, the Dowager Queen. Rudolph did succeed in deposing Henry and becoming king, then died due to stomach issues. This left Henry and Anne as Bohemian monarchs. Anne attempted to arrange Elizabeth's marriage, which Elizabeth refused, instead marrying John of Luxembourg, son of the Holy Roman Emperor at age 15. She was taller and older. Elizabeth became the figurehead of opposition against Henry. Together they invaded and took control of Bohemia, deposing Henry and Anne and becoming king and queen. They were crowned together in Prague in 1311. All was well in the beginning, even the marriage was happy. John was quite good at his job, and he and Elizabeth had 5 surviving children. They, of course, named their first son Wenceslaus. They worked very well together as a political team. John became an elector of the Holy Roman Empire but failed to become emperor himself. In Bohemia, as he was seen as foreign, John's position with his subjects was weak. He was made to accept conditions from the Czech nobles of Bohemia, which he disregarded until they revolted. He was not very fond of Bohemia, always traveling. John was known more as a knight than as a king, charming many across European courts, especially women. He and Elizabeth, through whom he made his claim to Bohemia and Poland in the first place, lived completely separately and did not have the greatest marriage. All he did for Bohemia was raise taxes so that he could fund his lifestyle, and so he grew to be hated in his adopted country. Elizabeth, not one to be left out of power, allegedly decided to take advantage of the situation. John initially had always listened to and respected her political advice, and sensing her influence fade, she plotted to depose John and replace him with their eldest son, a plot strengthened by the high status of the figures of John's opposing faction, which included the Dowager Queen. However, their schemes were soon uncovered. Growing insecure about his position after uncovering this plot, John sent his 3 oldest children to France without the knowledge of Elizabeth. She would never again see her children. Her eldest son would even be imprisoned by his father. After the birth of her second son, Elizabeth herself was forced to flee alone to Bavaria, where she was unsupported financially by John. There, she gave birth to twin daughters. Only one survived. Elizabeth returned to Prague a few years later. She suffered from tuberculosis throughout her final years, dying in September of 1330 at age 38. She was buried next to her father. John took a step back from ruling to focus on his knightly escapades, and would later become known as John the Blind, becoming a national hero of Luxembourg after his death at the Battle of Crécy during the 100 Years' War. Elizabeth's eldest son Wenceslaus would take the name Charles and be elected Holy Roman Emperor, also becoming King of Bohemia after his father's death. He would forever hold great affection for the Premyslid side of the family.